Good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's great to be here with Mark Mitchell, our Emergency Management and Recovery Minister, and also with Minister Mark Patterson, who represents this area and champions for it so well. And so it's been great, the three of us, to be able to come down here today, and the purpose really is to thank all of those that have been involved with the weather events over the last few days. I just want to acknowledge it is a tough time for the people of Otago who've been impacted by the severe weather event, and really the devastation is real, whether it be 11 families who have got red stickered properties at the moment, whether it be farmers that have lost huge amounts of livestock and lambs. It's been a difficult time, and obviously some challenges with respect to the roading infrastructure and network with slips and other things impacting property and roads. I just want to thank the mayors, Jules and Brian, for their leadership with their CEs and also with their councillors for their leadership over the course of the last few days. Also, I think CD Otago and the regional response has been outstanding, and I want to thank those people as well, along with the emergency personnel, the first responders who battled actually very, quite awful weather to be able to get the response in place over those last few days, and also the volunteers and all of the community that's come together and checked in on each other and supported each other in what has been very difficult times. It's been a real pleasure to be able to spend time with these folk over the course of this morning, whether it's been at the pump stations, whether it's been at the regional CD response or here in the bunker here in Dunedin City, and just to see teams of expertise coming together, working together as a team incredibly well. From a government point of view, obviously support will continue to be activated through MPI and through MSD, but again, can I say thank you to everyone involved in the response, and now for the councils and for the government, it's about getting back to business. I also just want to make comments before we go into any questions, just to say, look, today is also a day we remember the monstrous, brutal and horrific attack on Israel by Hamas, where 1,200 Israelis were killed, the greatest loss of Jewish life since World War II, where 251 hostages were taken, and reprehensively 1 year on, hostages are still being held by Hamas in Gaza, and we call for their unconditional and immediate release as we have been. The second point I'd say is Hamas terrorist attacks has set in motion, therefore, an unacceptable cycle of violence in the Middle East. It's caused human suffering and impacted innocent civilians on a huge scale, and an escalating conflict in the Middle East is just not what this country, what the world needs. The continued loss of life is really appalling, and the violence must end. And there simply is no military action that will reduce regional tensions and conflict. Peace will only come through diplomacy and negotiation, and ultimately a two-state solution enabling Palestinians and Israelis to live together in dignity and peace. So New Zealand will continue to call, as we have over 40 times I think already, for a ceasefire, for restraint, for de-escalation, and not for retaliation and reprisal. With that, happy to take your questions that you may have.
Prime Minister, why did your government reject Dunedin City Council's proposal for funding to buy out homes in low-lying areas, in areas that have flooded here in South Dunedin?
I'll let Mark talk to that with respect to impacted properties and where we're working our way through that.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, we haven't had any requests at all in terms of dealing with those issues. We understand that there's 11 properties that have been red stickered, primarily because of the slips, so it's not safe for people to be in them. Obviously, the council now will be doing work around whether or not there can be mitigation done to allow those people to return. But look, the reason why we're here and we always turn up early is because we want to partner with local government to make sure that people are looked after.
Sorry, to clarify, this was before this flooding. Since the 2015 floods, last year Dunedin City Council put a proposal to government that this year was rejected, asking for money to buy out houses in low-lying areas.
I'd have to go back and check on the detail on that.
Can I just ask about the floods in regards to, obviously you went out to the pump stations today and have a look at that. In terms of further infrastructure in regards to that, I know Council's looking at wanting to do more of that. Would the government be looking to support that in any financial way? Well,
look, as you know, the Three Waters is a major issue for New Zealand. We've got major infrastructure challenges on Three Waters. We've got a plan called Local Water Done Well. We're working our way through with councils to make sure that we can work together to have the capacity to be able to finance investments that are needed going forward. As you know, a lot of councils are coming together in council-controlled organisations, getting balance sheet separation so they can borrow money to actually make sure that they invest in their infrastructure consistently year in, year out for long run assets. So, we've got a program of work that's happening through local government, and Simeon Brown and his team are engaging each of the different, district councils and regional councils on those top proposals.
So you'd like the councils to rely on that new funding model, then maybe a separate fund that may target a certain area like South Dunedin, areas that they're willing to...
Well, as Simeon Brown and local government has proposed a number of different models by which councils can access financing for long-run assets that are 30, 50 or 70 years aged, and as a result get the financing in place to deal with that. As you've seen in Auckland, different situation, but we have Watercare now as a distinct balance sheet separated council-controlled organisation. It can borrow up to 5 times, and as a result now has clear pathway forward with a series of billions of dollars worth of investment over the next 30 years. At the same time, the council's balance sheet is freed up. It's got an extra $800 million that it didn't plan on, and as a result, rates didn't go up to 26%, they only went up 7%. So there's some funding and financing mechanisms, as you know, through Three Waters that we're working through with different councils around the options that they have available to them.
To the hospital here in Dunedin, you're met with some protesters at the airport and other places around town today. What do you say to them, and what do you make of their, obviously they're calling for something to be done in regards to keeping promise of building the hospital as is.
Yeah.
What have you taken from that?
Look, I fully understand the frustration. It's also frustrating for a government that's been in power for 10 months inheriting this mess as well. But we are going to build a great hospital here in Dunedin, but it's going to be at 1.9 billion, not approaching 3 billion. And as a result, that's the work that will go on from here. This is a project that started at 1.2, went to 1.6. We've put another 300 million in to bring it up to 1.9. We're not building the most expensive hospital in the Southern Hemisphere at 3 billion New Zealand dollars. We're going to build a great hospital for $2 billion. So there's an urgent review, as you understand, with a couple of options that are going to be considered. And the reason is it's important that we do deliver within our budgets. We've had inherited a series of cost creeps and scope creeps, whether it's been on ferries, whether it's been on school buildings, and now we see in hospitals as well. And we want to be able to do that because we also have other regional hospitals across the country of smaller scope and scale that actually rely on that infrastructure money, whether you're in Whangarei or Palmerston North or Nelson or Tauranga for that matter.
To the Navy ship in Samoa, how concerned are you by that sinking?
Look, it's incredibly concerning. I mean, the primary focus is to make sure that all 75 of our personnel on that boat, on that ship, are safe and well, and their welfare is our primary consideration. I can report that all 75 are on land. We hope to repatriate them back home to New Zealand to their families and friends and loved ones as quickly as possible. Our focus now moves to making sure we can mitigate and minimise any environmental impacts, and we've had teams go up last night with the C-130 with a kit on board to help with environmental effects, and we'll have more support going up through the course of today. And then the third thing is that we need to obviously kick off a court of inquiry to understand actually what did happen, but that should be not speculation, that should be a facts-driven process and follow through the court of inquiry model.
Have you been advised how long that cleanup is going to take? Residents are rightly really concerned about that environmental impact and saying, rubbish, oil is everywhere and it needs to be cleaned up immediately, not tomorrow, for example.
Yeah, well, as I said, we put a C-130 up there last night. We put as much of our environmental spill kits and equipment as we possibly can. Maritime New Zealand also has huge capacity and capability, and that's on its way up there as well. I've spoken to the Acting Prime Minister of Samoa yesterday. They've welcomed any and all support that we can offer, and that's what we plan to do. We're going to do everything it takes to make sure that we do the very best we can to minimise the environmental impacts.
Prime Minister, what help are you going to provide to regions outside of Dunedin affected by the flooding, such as Clifford?
Well, again, the same model exists. We need to make sure that they've got access to the same support, whether it's through MSD or through MPI. That was one of the conversation points we had today, just to go back and check that is actually happening. But again, what I think was quite evident was actually the regional response, whether not just Dunedin City, but Dunedin City as part of a broader regional response was very impressive. There was very good examples in the conversations I had with the regional team of actually listening to local knowledge and farmers in particular around different stop banks on rivers and actually making decisions based off that advice and that local knowledge that's out there. So, I'm sure there's lots of things that we can improve and there'll be time for an after-action review, but I have to say I think the response has been exceptional.
And as these weather events continue, what is your government committed to do specifically, financially, to help the Dunedin City Council address the particular issues in South Dunedin?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we're very up for working in city and regional deals, as I've talked about before. That also has rights and responsibilities to it as well. It's not a one-way traffic. It's actually partnership between local and central government. We talked about three waters. There has to be a different model that emerges in order to actually fund the investment that's needed. But importantly, you know, for us on events like this, we also need to start to think about climate adaptation and actually how we're going to deal with all of those issues across this country. They are difficult issues. No one in the world has cracked those issues because there's landowners involved and property owners, there's local councils, regional councils, central government, banks, insurers, and often the effects are felt in this generation and the next. And so what we're looking for is a bipartisan approach where we can actually have all political parties on board, knowing that there'll be different governments over the next few 30, 50 years of different colours and persuasions. And we're trying to create a framework which Simon Watts is leading with other parties involved, trying to bring them on board to say, look, let's get a common New Zealand Inc. approach to this, not make it a political issue.
That proposal that the Dunedin City Council put to you that was rejected, that was their plan for climate adaptation, buying up homes in low-lying areas with government support to ensure those people are safe and those homes aren't lived in. So were you aware of that proposal?
Well, I'm not. I haven't.
Government rejected it.
I haven't seen advice on that, and I am not aware of that. As I said, we can look into the details and talk more about it. But for right now, what we're focused on is the response to the immediate events that happened not in 2015, but what happened this time round. And as you saw, there was a huge quantity of water, and it was not uncomparable to 2015 from what I understand, and yet the situation was handled in a much better way and with a better response. And that's what's important here, is that we keep getting better at the responses and keep moving it forward.
Is that something that could be back on the table though?
Well, again, you know, the reality for us is that if you think about the whole of the situation across all of New Zealand, we need to be able to put a climate adaptation framework in place. That is an issue not just for New Zealand, but it's for many other countries and leaders that I've spoken with as well. What we're trying to do is, through Simon Watts, our climate change minister, as I said, build out a framework that's multi-generational, acknowledges that there are many stakeholders that are involved. The council has some responsibility, regional council has some responsibility, the property owners have their own responsibility, frankly, the banks, the insurers, and the government centrally as well. So it's about trying to put a framework together to say, right, how do we manage that risk between all of those stakeholders, and how do we manage that risk in this generation and the next that comes after us as well? Because the easiest thing is just to keep punting it down the road, and actually we need to make a start, and that's why we're going to try and do a climate adaptation framework to try and keep political support for it in a bipartisan way.
What kind of funding is your government prepared to dedicate to support the Dunedin City Council's climate change adaptation measures and strategies?
Well, again, those should be two-way conversations. We're a new government 10 months into it. That'll be led by Simon Watts, our climate change minister, because we need a national system response here, not just bespoke responses where councils go off and do their own thing. We want that to be genuinely a partnership and a join-up between central and local government and other stakeholders.
So just want to talk about firearms for a second. The questions here. Police fear the government's making it easier for gangs to get their hands on bullets with Nicole McKee's gun club changes. Is this not irresponsible? No,
look, it's a minor technical change where if you have guns and ammunition stored on ranges, they don't need to be reported. If guns or ammunition is taken off a range, it does. Our gun ranges are manned by volunteers, and we want to improve and lift gun safety in New Zealand, and so we want to encourage people to be on ranges to do that. It's a minor technical change to reporting, but I disagree with that.
What's the point of taking the patches off them if they're helping them get bullets?
Well, I'm telling you right now, we are going to be tough on gangs because they ain't a Rotary Club. They're 1/4% of the population, causing 1/5 to 1/4 of all violent crime in New Zealand. We are determined to actually lower violent crime in this country, and we are going to restore law and order and rights and responsibilities. And so we make no apology for being tough on gangs by removing patches, stopping them associating, consorting, and making sure we crack down on legal guns through firearm prohibition orders.
Last question of Mark Mitchell.
Sure.
Okay. Nicole McKee says the police are wrong. What do you believe, the police or Nicole McKee?
Well, I just want to be really clear that this government is focused on improving public safety, and that means going after the gangs. It means we've got a very big public safety program in terms of legislation coming through. We have strengthened the firearms prohibition orders to give a warrantless search power, which makes it easier for police to remove and take firearms off gang members. We know that we've seen a big problem grow over the last 5 or 6 years in terms of increasing gang members. They're carrying firearms, they're more likely to use them. That makes frontline police officers' job more dangerous and inherently puts the public at more risk as well. Nicole McKee is focused on improving public safety, And the Prime Minister has just highlighted the fact that it was a small technical change. For volunteers that run these ranges, it's important that these ranges stay open because that's where the fire safety rules are actually delivered. Safety around the use of firearms and the ability to be able to use them in a controlled environment. We don't want the ranges closing because then people go and start using firearms out in public. Everything that we're doing is geared around public safety. You've seen that we are clamping down hard on gangs. That has already happened. I want to acknowledge the police and the outstanding work they've done with the Comancheros recently. You're going to see that continue.
A couple more questions, guys.
Prime Minister,
Yes.
14 months since your last visit to Dunedin, there's a perception out there you might be snubbing the city. What would you say to that?
I disagree. I love this city. My grandfather was born in Ellington. I spent a lot of time here and know it well, and I've got a lot of time for it. So it's good to be here today, recognising and thanking the people that put a lot of effort together to support their community.
Did you plans to come to the city before a state of emergency was declared?
Yeah, I think I was actually due to come in the next few weeks, actually, but I decided I'd come today because I wanted to make sure I thanked and appreciated people that stood up and delivered for their community. I think that's really important we do that.
So 35,000 people turned out to protest the cuts to the Dunedin Hospital. Are you confident you can deliver what was promised within a $1.9 billion package?
Yeah, look, I get the frustration, how frustrated do you think I feel? I've been leading a government for 10 months. The previous administration had 6 years to get this done and nothing happened of any consequence. So the bottom line is we are going to build things in this country. You've seen us announce our fast-track legislation yesterday. We are over it. We need to get things moving. We need to get things built. We need to get things started. So for $1.9 billion, we're going to build a good hospital down here in the south. Don't worry about that. But we do not need $3 billion and a massive cost overrun, which means we can't then support other infrastructure that we desperately need in healthcare across other regional centres.
A couple of very quick questions on the upcoming East Asia Summit.
Yes.
Why have you prioritised attending it? Is it still relevant?
Yes, it is, because ASEAN is a key part for New Zealand. If you think about our interests that are in the Indo-Pacific region, we have security and economic interests that are in that region. We have our own independent foreign policy. My job is to act in our national interests and to enhance them. It's been a long-standing commitment from New Zealand Prime Ministers. We play a key role in that forum, in the East Asia Summit, and it's a chance for us to spend time with our ASEAN partners, who I'm trying to build relationships with bilaterally, but also collectively as we step change and lift the intensity and urgency of our foreign relationships.
What are you hoping to achieve by your end?
Well, again, a lot of it will be focused on making sure we enhance the international rules-based system, make sure that the values that we stand up for around national sovereignty, international rules-based system, freedom of navigation, in a security sense. We want a peaceful and stable region, and we also need to continue to advance our economic interests, and so there'll be conversations on both those topics.
You mentioned the fast track bill. Are you in a position to release any conflicts that some ministers may have raised?
Oh, look, we've managed the process incredibly tidily as we've had conversations. We've probably over-egged it to make sure that anyone who's got any association is raised and conflicted, and we've managed that through our Cabinet Office process. But what I'd say to you is it's pretty exciting when you think that, in that set of projects represents 55,000 houses. In that set of projects represents renewable energy projects that equate to a 30% of New Zealand's currently electric generation. In that list sits 180 kilometres of new roads as well across the country. So, as I said, New Zealand has a major challenge. We have turned this country into an obstruction economy. It is full of bureaucracy. We need to release the red tape. We need to get things built and get on and do things. And you have a great example in this city when a hospital really over 6 years didn't progress. That's not acceptable. We need to be able to move quicker, faster. Some of it's public infrastructure, some of it's private, but it's getting things done, because that's what New Zealand has sent us to government to do, and that's what we are going to do.
Why is the government suggesting retrofitting the hospital when repeated studies have shown it be more expensive and take more time to do?
Yeah, look, again, all we're doing is we've had a project blowout from $1.2 billion to $3 billion, approaching $3 billion, and as a result, we're doing a very quick, taking urgent advice about whether we do staged at the old facility or scale back at the new facility, new site. We'll look at both those options. We'll come back with a decision very... Sorry?
Wouldn't delay make the cost up, sir?
Sorry, say that again. I missed the question.
Wouldn't delay increase the costs?
Well, again, we're going to move through that process very quickly, but I think if you felt that way so strongly, maybe over the last 6 years, we could have seen a lot more progress and we didn't. So this is a government that's going to get things done. We're going to build a great hospital. We've got to do it for $1.9 billion. It'll be then one of the most expensive hospitals in the Southern Hemisphere, but we're determined to build a good hospital here, period. But we have to do it within the budget. We cannot be in the situation that we've inherited where we have a $600 million project for ferries that blows out to $3 billion. We have 450 school buildings and projects that end up being underfunded by billions of dollars. We have a hospital here that's blowing out to approaching $3 billion. We'll get it right sized, we'll get it sorted, we'll get good value, and we'll make sure we build a good hospital.
Right, thanks.
Okay, thanks team.
Very much. Thank you.